Jake had always been the careful type. Every morning, he would check his biofilter readings 3 times before starting his shift. The small device attached to his chest wasn't just equipment. It was his lifeline. Without it, he couldn't breathe properly in the recycled air of the mining ship Star Runner. 3 years ago, Jake had been working in the mines of Europa when disaster struck. A gas leak in the tunnel had damaged his lungs so badly that doctors said he would never breathe normally again. That's when they gave him the biofilter, an amazing piece of technology that cleaned the air for him and helped his damaged lungs work. The biofilter looked like a small metal box with tubes going into his chest. It wasn't pretty, but it kept him alive. Jake had learned to live with it, even though it made strange humming sounds and glowed with a soft blue light. Other crew members sometimes stared, but Jake didn't mind. He was grateful to be alive and working among the stars. But today was different. Today, Jake stared at his readings with growing fear. The numbers on his tablet made his heart race. Last week, his biofilter was working at 15% efficiency. Not great, but enough to keep him going. Yesterday, it had dropped to 8%, but this morning, the screen showed something that made his hands shake. 1%. Jake sat on the edge of his narrow bunk, holding the tablet with trembling fingers. The biofilter on his chest wheezed with each breath, working harder than ever before. He could feel it struggling, like an old engine trying to climb a steep hill. The device that had saved his life was now failing him when he needed it most. He pressed the diagnostic button again, hoping the reading was wrong. But the cruel red numbers didn't change. 1% efficiency. The medical computer estimated he had maybe 6 hours of breath. Able air left, 8 hours if he stayed completely still and didn't move around. Jake thought about his younger brother Tom back on Earth. Tom was studying to become a doctor, using the money Jake sent home from his mining job. Their parents had died when they were kids, and Jake had promised to take care of Tom no matter what. Now, floating in space billions of miles from home, Jake realized he might never see his brother again. The ship's medical bay was small and basic. They had bandages and pain medicine, but nothing that could fix a biofilter. The nearest medical station was for days away, and Jake knew he wouldn't survive that long. His body was already working harder with each breath, his heart beating faster as it tried to get enough oxygen. Jake pulled out his tablet and started typing a message to Tom. His fingers moved slowly across the screen as he tried to find the right words. How do you tell your little brother that you're going to die alone in space? How do you explain that all your dreams of coming home rich were just that, dreams? Dear Tom, he wrote, then stopped. What came next? Jake had always been better with his hands than with words. He could fix mining equipment and operate heavy machinery, but expressing his feelings had never been easy. He was still staring at the blank message when the ship's alarm started blaring. The lights in his cabin turned red, and Captain Williams's voice echoed through the ship's speakers. Jake had never heard the captain sound so worried. All hands, this is not a drill. We have an unknown vessel on collision course with our ship. All crew members report to emergency stations immediately. Jake stood up quickly, then sat back down as dizziness hit him. The biofilter was working so hard now that any sudden movement made him lightheaded. Through the small window in his cabin, he could see something that made him forget about his own problems for a moment. A ship unlike anything he had ever seen was drifting toward them. It wasn't the clean metal design of human spacecraft. This ship looked almost alive, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to pulse with their own light. Parts of it were damaged, with holes in the hull that leaked a strange, glowing gas into space. Jake had heard stories about alien ships, but he had never expected to see one. The Galactic Cooperative had made contact with humanity just 2 years ago, but most people like Jake, ordinary workers in the far reaches of space, had never actually met an alien. The ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Its hull was made of materials that seemed to shift between solid metal and living tissue. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing with the same blue light that came from his biofilter. As it got closer, Jake could see that the ship was badly damaged. Whatever had happened to it? The crew inside was probably in serious trouble. Captain Williams's voice came over the intercom again. Damage control teams, prepare for emergency boarding. We're going to try to help whoever's on that ship. Jake stood up again, more carefully this time. His biofilter made a soft beeping sound, reminding him that time was running out. But looking at the damaged alien ship, he realized that he might not be the only one fighting for his life today. He had studied alien technology in his spare time, fascinated by how different species solved the same problems in completely different ways. Jake wasn't a scientist or a diplomat, but he knew more about alien life support systems than most of the crew. If there were survivors on that ship, they might need someone who could understand their technology. Jake checked his biofilter. Readings one more time. The red numbers glowed mockingly at him. 6 hours, maybe less. But 6 hours might be enough to help save whoever was on that mysterious ship. He had spent the last 3 years of his life taking air from a machine. Maybe it was time to give something back. As he prepared to leave his cabin, Jake took one last look at the unfinished message to his brother. He would complete it later, he promised himself. After they rescued the aliens, after he proved that his life had meant something more than just mining rocks in space, the biofilter on his chest hummed its familiar tune, working harder than ever to keep him alive. Jake patted it gently, like an old friend. "Come on, buddy," he whispered. "Let's go save some lives." He didn't know that in a few hours, he would face an impossible choice. He didn't know that his failing biofilter would become the key to saving not just one life, but potentially preventing a war between entire worlds. All Jake knew was that somewhere on that damaged ship, someone needed help. And despite everything, despite his own desperate situation, Jake Chen was still the kind of person who couldn't ignore a call for help. The alien ship was even more incredible up close. Jake pressed his face against the docking bay window, watching the rescue team prepare their equipment. The mysterious vessel looked like nothing he had ever seen in any textbook or training manual. Its hull seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting slowly like a sleeping giant. Strange blue liquid was leaking from several holes in the ship's side. The liquid didn't behave like any normal fluid. It moved in perfect spheres, floating through space like glowing bubbles. Jake realized this wasn't just a leak. This was the aliens' air, their life support system escaping into the vacuum of space. His biofilter wheezed again, reminding him of his own desperate situation. 4.5 hours left, according to his readings. But Jake couldn't stop staring at the alien ship. Whoever was inside was probably in the same situation he was, fighting for every breath, running out of time. "Jake, what are you doing here?" Captain Williams appeared beside him, suited up for the rescue mission. "You should be resting, conserving your strength." "Captain, I need to come with you," Jake said, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. "I've been studying alien technology for 2 years. If that ship is from the Galactic Cooperative, I might be the only person on this crew who can understand their systems." Captain Williams shook her head. "Jake, your biofilter is failing. You can't handle the stress of a rescue mission. With respect, Captain, I'm going to die anyway." Jake's words hung in the air between them. "At least let me die doing something useful. If there are survivors on that ship, they'll need someone who speaks their language." Jake had spent countless hours learning about the different species in the Galactic Cooperative. While other crew members relaxed during their free time, Jake studied alien cultures and technologies. He had always been fascinated by how different species solved the same problems, in completely different ways. The captain looked at Jake's determined face, then at the readings on his biofilter. Finally, she nodded. "Suit up. But you stay close to the team, and if I say you're coming back, you're coming back." Jake pulled on his spacesuit with practiced movements. The biofilter attached to special connections inside the suit, allowing him to breathe the suit's oxygen supply when needed. As he sealed his helmet, Jake felt a strange calm settle over him for the first time in days. He had a purpose beyond just surviving. The rescue team consisted of 5 people: Captain Williams, Dr. Peterson from the medical bay, 2 engineers named Alex and Riley, and now Jake. They moved through the docking tube that connected their ship to the alien vessel. Their helmet lights, cutting through the darkness, the moment they entered the alien ship. Jake knew they were in a completely different world. The corridors weren't filled with air like a human ship. Instead, they were filled with a thick, glowing gel that moved, like slow water. The walls themselves seemed alive, pulsing with soft light that traveled in waves along their surface. "This is incredible," Dr. Peterson whispered over the comm system. "The entire ship is like one giant organism." Jake's translator device started, picking up weak signals from somewhere deep in the ship. The sounds were unlike anything he had ever heard, clicks and whistles that seemed to form complex patterns. It was hauntingly beautiful, like whale songs mixed with wind chimes. "Those are distress calls," Jake said, recognizing the patterns from his studies. "Someone's alive in there, and they're asking for help." The team moved deeper into the ship, following the distress signals. The thick gel made movement difficult, but Jake noticed that it seemed to help them breathe. The gel was rich with oxygen, designed to support life in ways that human technology couldn't match. As they moved through the ship, Jake began to understand what had happened. This wasn't just a mechanical failure or an accident. The ship showed signs of attack, blast marks on the walls, damaged systems, and most importantly, the life support systems had been deliberately targeted. Someone wanted to make sure the crew couldn't survive, Jake told the team. This was an act of war. They found the medical bay in the center of the ship, a circular room with walls that glowed soft green. The alien technology was beautiful and complex, with controls that responded to touch and seemed to anticipate what the user needed. And there, in the center of the room, they found her. The alien was unlike anything Jake had imagined. She was roughly human-sized but covered in scales that shifted color from deep purple to bright silver. Her breathing apparatus was damaged, and her skin was turning a worrying shade of gray. She was unconscious, but her body was still fighting to stay alive. "She's dying," Dr. Peterson said, scanning the alien with his medical equipment. "Her oxygen levels are dropping fast." Jake approached the alien medical console, his hands moving over the strange controls. The symbols were unfamiliar, but the basic principles were the same as any life support system. The alien's breathing apparatus had been damaged in the attack, and her body was slowly shutting down. According to this, Jake said, reading the alien medical display, "Her name is something like Kethara. She's not just a random crew member. These readings suggest she's someone important." The ship's computer system suddenly activated, projecting a holographic image of the alien when she was healthy. The image spoke in the clicking, musical language of her species. But Jake's translator picked up enough to understand the basic message. "She's a diplomatic attaché," Jake said, his voice filled with awe. "She's one of the key negotiators working on the peace treaty between the Galactic Cooperative and humanity." The importance of the situation hit everyone at once. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. The alien woman lying before them was one of the most important figures in interstellar diplomacy. Her death could destroy the fragile peace that had taken years to build. "How long does she have?" Captain Williams asked. Jake studied the medical readouts, his translator working overtime to decode the alien measurements. "Maybe 2 hours before her respiratory system shuts down completely. Her breathing apparatus is too damaged to repair, and she needs a replacement." Dr. Peterson ran his scanner over the alien's body, comparing her biology to human physiology. "Her respiratory system is completely different from ours. She doesn't just breathe oxygen. She needs a complex mixture of gases that her body processes differently." Jake knelt beside Kethara's unconscious form, studying her alien features. Even unconscious, she had a dignity about her that reminded him of the great diplomats he had read about in history books. This was someone who had dedicated her life to building bridges between different worlds. "There might be a way," Jake said quietly, his mind racing through possibilities. "Her species uses biofilters similar to ours, but more advanced. If we could find a biofilter that could be adapted to her physiology." The team looked around the damaged medical bay, searching for any device that might help. But the attack had been thorough. most of the medical equipment was destroyed or damaged beyond repair. That's when Jake realized the terrible truth. There was only one biofilter within reach that might be adaptable to the aliens' biology. One biofilter that had been modified with the kind of synthetic compounds that could bridge the gap between human and alien physiology, his own. Jake looked down at the biofilter attached to his chest, the device that had kept him alive for 3 years, the device that was already failing, giving him maybe 4 hours of life. He thought about his brother Tom, about all the promises he had made to come home safely. Then he looked at Kethara, this alien diplomat whose life could mean the difference between peace and war for billions of beings across the galaxy. To people from different worlds, both fighting for breath in the cold emptiness of space. Jake, Captain Williams said, reading his expression, whatever you're thinking, there has to be another way. But Jake was already running calculations in his head, measuring the time he had left against the time needed to save an alien he had never met. His biofilter hummed on his chest, working harder than ever to keep him alive. In a few minutes, he would have to make the most important decision of his life, and deep down, Jake already knew what that decision would be. Part 3, The Impossible Choice, Expanded Storager. Peterson stared at the readings on Jake's portable scanner, his face pale behind his helmet visor. The numbers didn't lie, but they told a story that no one wanted to hear. Jake, even if we could somehow adapt your biofilter to work with her alien biology, you'd only have about 30 minutes of air left in your suit tanks. That's not nearly enough time to get back to our ship. Jake felt his heart skip a beat, but his voice remained calm. 30 minutes is enough time to save her life. That's what matters. The alien diplomat, Kethara, lay unconscious on the strange medical bed that seemed to mold itself to her body. Her breathing was getting weaker with each passing minute. The damaged breathing apparatus on her chest sparked occasionally, fighting a losing battle to keep her alive. Jake had studied her species during his free time, fascinated by how the Zephyrians had evolved to breathe a complex mixture of gases. Their home planet had an atmosphere unlike Earth's, and their bodies had adapted in amazing ways. But that same adaptation meant that human life support systems were useless to them. There has to be another option, Captain Williams said, her voice tight with worry. We could try to fix her breathing apparatus, or maybe find spare parts somewhere on this ship. Dr. Peterson shook his head sadly. Captain, I've been studying her biology for the past 20 minutes. Her respiratory system is completely different from ours. A standard human biofilter would never work. But Jake's device has been modified with synthetic compounds that might be able to bridge the gap between human and alien physiology. Jake knelt beside Kethara, looking at her peaceful face. Even unconscious, she had a strength about her that reminded him of his own determination to survive. Her scales shimmered with a faint light, and he could see the intelligence in her features. This was someone who had spent her life building bridges between different worlds. Someone who believed that different species could work together. The medical records show she's not just any diplomat, Jake said quietly. She's one of the lead negotiators for the peace treaty. If she dies, it could destroy everything our people have worked for. The weight of the situation pressed down on the entire team. They all knew about the delicate negotiations between humanity and the Galactic Cooperative. After years of careful diplomacy, the two sides were finally close to signing a comprehensive peace agreement, but there were still those on both sides who wanted war, who believed that different species could never truly coexist. Jake began carefully examining his biofilter, the device that had been his constant companion for 3 years. It was more than just a machine to him. It was a piece of technology that had given him a second chance at life. The synthetic compounds that Dr. Peterson mentioned were special modifications that had been made to help his damaged lungs process the recycled air of spaceships. I need to understand something, Jake said, looking up at Dr. Peterson. If I give her my biofilter, what exactly happens to me? Dr. Peterson's voice was gentle but honest. Your suit has about 30 minutes of emergency oxygen in the thick gel atmosphere of this ship. That might stretch to 40 minutes if you stay calm and don't exert yourself. But Jake, the journey back to our ship takes at least 20 minutes. And that's if everything goes perfectly. Jake nodded, accepting the harsh reality. He had always known that his biofilter might fail someday. He just hadn't expected it to happen so far from home. And he certainly hadn't expected to have a choice about how to use his remaining time. What about her? Jake asked, gesturing toward Cathara. If the adaptation works, will she survive? The biofilter should stabilize her breathing long enough for us to get her back to our ship. Dr. Peterson explained. Once we're there, we can contact the cooperative and arrange for proper medical care. She'll live, Jake. She'll go home to her people. Jake thought about his own people, about his brother Tom studying medicine back on Earth. Tom had always wanted to be a doctor because he wanted to help people, to save lives. Maybe this was Jake's chance to do the same thing, in his own way. I keep thinking about something, Jake said, his voice thoughtful. 3 years ago, when my lungs were damaged, someone made the choice to save my life. They could have given up on me, said I was too far gone. But they didn't. They built this biofilter, gave me 3 more years of life. Captain Williams knelt beside him. Jake, those 3 years were supposed to be the beginning of a new life for you, not the end. Maybe they were both, Jake replied. Maybe everything that happened to me, the accident, the biofilter, even being here on this ship at this exact moment, maybe it was all leading to this. The alien medical equipment around them pulsed with soft light, as if responding to their conversation. Jake noticed that some of the readings were getting more urgent. Cathara's time was running out faster than expected. We need to make a decision, Dr. Peterson said urgently. Her oxygen levels are dropping rapidly. If we're going to do this, it has to be now. Jake looked around at his crewmates, these people who had become his family over the past year. He thought about all the conversations they'd had about the future, about what would happen when humanity finally became a true member of the galactic community. They had dreamed about exploring new worlds, meeting new species, and building a better future for everyone. I want you all to know something, Jake said, his voice steady. I'm not doing this because I'm giving up. I'm doing this because I finally understand what I was meant to do with my life. He began the delicate process of disconnecting his biofilter, his hands moving with practiced precision. The device had been surgically attached to his chest, and removing it was not simple. But Jake had studied the procedure, knowing that someday he might need to perform maintenance on the device himself. Jake, please, Captain Williams said, her voice breaking. Let us find another way, Captain. Look at her, Jake said, gesturing toward Cathara. She's someone's daughter, someone's friend. She has people waiting for her to come home, just like I have Tom waiting for me. But she has something I don't have. She has the power to prevent a war. As Jake worked on disconnecting the biofilter, he felt the immediate difference in his breathing. The device had been doing so much work that he hadn't fully realized how much he depended on it. Each breath became a conscious effort, but he pushed through the discomfort. The adaptation process is complex, Dr. Peterson said, guiding Jake through the technical aspects. We need to adjust the synthetic compounds to match her biology. One mistake and the biofilter won't work for either of you. Jake's hands were steady as he worked, despite the growing difficulty of breathing. This was the most important repair job of his life, more crucial than any mining equipment he had ever fixed. This time, he wasn't just fixing a machine, he was fixing the future. Cathara's eyes suddenly fluttered open, her large silver eyes focusing on Jake's face through his helmet. She couldn't speak with her damaged breathing apparatus, but something passed between them in that moment, a recognition, perhaps, or an understanding that transcended the barriers of language and species. Through the ship's translation system, her words came weakly, human. Why do you risk yourself for me? Jake paused in his work, looking into her alien eyes. Because you're not just an alien to me. You're someone who needs help. And I have the power to help you. That's all that matters. The biofilter was almost ready for adaptation. Jake could feel his strength fading, but his determination only grew stronger. In a few minutes, he would make the final connection, and his fate would be sealed. But for the first time in days, Jake felt truly alive. Part 4, The Sacrifice, Expanded Story of Biofilter Adaptation, took 12 of the most intense minutes of Jake's life. His hands trembled as he worked, not from fear, but from the growing strain of breathing without his life support system. Every breath was now a conscious battle, and he could feel his body working harder with each passing second. Dr. Peterson guided him through the complex process, his voice a steady anchor in the storm of technical challenges. Okay, Jake, you need to carefully adjust the membrane settings. See that blue indicator? It needs to match the pattern of her breathing rhythm. Jake's fingers moved across the alien controls, guided by 3 years of experience with his own biofilter and 2 years of studying alien technology. The device in his hands represented the bridge between two completely different forms of life, human engineering and Zephyrian biology working together in ways that neither species had imagined possible. The synthetic compounds are adapting, Dr. Peterson reported, watching the readings on his scanner. Jake, this is incredible. Your biofilter is actually learning her biological patterns and adjusting itself automatically. Cathara remained conscious throughout the entire procedure, her large silver eyes never leaving Jake's face. The ship's translation system had finally managed to decode more of her language, allowing for basic communication. Her voice, when it came through the speakers, was weak but filled with wonder. Your name, she whispered. I must know your name. Jake, he replied, pausing in his work to look at her. Jake Chen. I'm a mining engineer from Earth. Jake Chen, she repeated, as if memorizing every syllable. Why do you give your breath to me? We have never met. Our worlds are different. Jake considered her question while his hands continued their delicate work. How could he explain to an alien diplomat the simple human instinct to help someone in need? How could he describe the feeling that some things were more important than individual survival? Because that's what people do, Jake said finally. When someone needs help, you help them. It doesn't matter if they're from Earth or from a planet I can't even pronounce. You're in trouble, and I can fix that trouble. Through the translation system, he heard something that might have been alien laughter, soft and musical. Your species is strange, Jake Chen. But perhaps that strangeness is why peace between us is possible. The biofilter clicked into place around Cathara's respiratory system with a sound like a gentle sigh. Immediately, Jake could see the difference. Her breathing became easier, deeper, and her skin began to return to its normal purple color. The device's indicators showed green across the board. Adaptation successful. It's working, Dr. Peterson said, his voice filled with amazement. Jake, you did it. She's stabilizing. Jake sat back against the alien medical bed, exhausted. His suit's oxygen indicator now showed just 7 minutes remaining. Around him, the rescue team prepared for emergency evacuation. But Jake knew the mathematics of the situation. The journey back to their ship would take at least 15 minutes. Even with the fastest transport pods, Jake, we're not leaving you behind, Captain Williams said firmly, but Jake could hear the uncertainty in her voice. They all knew the numbers. Captain, you have to, Jake replied, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what was happening. Get Cathara back to our ship. Contact the cooperative. Make sure she gets the medical attention she needs. That's not a request. That's an order from someone who's about to become a very short footnote in the mission logs. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on Jake. He had spent 3 years living on borrowed time, each breath a gift from technology that extended his life beyond what should have been possible. Now, in giving that gift to someone else, he was finally paying the debt he owed to the universe. Cathara's scaled hand found his gloved one, her touch surprisingly warm even through the suit's protection. Through the translator, her words came with growing strength. Your sacrifice. I will carry it with me always. My people will know what you have done. Don't call it a sacrifice. Jake said gently, call it a choice. I chose to help you because I could. That's what humans do. We choose to help when we can. As the rescue team prepared to move Cathara to the transport pod, Jake made his way slowly through the ship's corridors. He had decided that if these were to be his final moments, he wanted to spend them somewhere meaningful. The ship's observation deck offered a view of space that took his breath away, literally and figuratively. The twin suns of the Kepler 440 system painted the nearby nebula in shades of gold and crimson. In the distance, he could see the star Runner, its lights a comforting reminder of home and humanity among the vast darkness of space. Stars stretched out in every direction, each one representing countless worlds, countless possibilities for life and friendship between species. Jake pulled out his tablet and finished the message he had started to his brother. His fingers moved slowly across the screen, but his thoughts were clear. "Dear Tom," he wrote, "by the time you read this, I'll be gone. But I want you to know that I didn't die sad or scared. I died doing something important. Something that might help make the galaxy a better place for people like you." He paused, thinking about his little brother studying medicine back on Earth. Tom had always wanted to save lives, to make a difference in the world. Maybe this was Jake's way of doing the same thing. "I came out here to mine asteroids and make enough money to pay for your education. I'm dying having helped save someone who might prevent a war between worlds. I think that's a pretty good trade." Jake's oxygen indicator showed for minutes remaining. He leaned back against the observation deck's viewing port, watching the dance of light and shadow across the nebula. His breathing was becoming more labored, but strangely, he felt more at peace than he had in years. "The doctors told me 3 years ago that my damaged lungs meant I'd never live a normal life," he continued typing. "They were wrong. I got to live among the stars, meet incredible people, and maybe even help prevent a galactic war. That's not normal. That's extraordinary." 3 minutes. Jake thought about all the science fiction stories he had read as a child, dreaming of adventure among the stars. He had never imagined that his own adventure would end this way, but somehow it felt right. He had lived his childhood dreams and died making them possible for others. Take care of yourself, Tom. Become the doctor you've always wanted to be. Save lives, heal people. And remember that sometimes the smallest actions can have the biggest impact. Your big brother is proud of you. 2 minutes. Through the observation deck speakers, Jake heard the sound of the transport pod launching, carrying Cathara back to safety. Mission accomplished. The alien diplomat would live to continue her work, to build bridges between worlds, to prevent the kind of conflicts that had shaped too much of galactic history. 1 minute. Jake saved the message and set it to automatically transmit to Earth. Then he sat back and watched the stars, thinking about the incredible chain of events that had brought him to this moment. A mining accident that damaged his lungs, a biofilter that gave him 3 extra years of life, a chance encounter with an alien ship, and finally, a choice that might change the course of history. His biofilter had been at 1% efficiency when he made his decision, but the impact of that decision would ripple across the galaxy for generations to come. As Jake's eyes grew heavy and his breathing slowed, he smiled at the thought that sometimes the most important moments in history came not from grand gestures by famous people, but from ordinary individuals making extraordinary choices when it mattered most. The stars watched over Jake Chen's final moments, silent witnesses to a sacrifice that would never be forgotten. Part 5, Legacy of Breath, expanded story. Jake Chen died as quietly as he had lived, with dignity, courage, and his eyes fixed on the infinite beauty of the stars. The rescue team found him 3 hours later in the observation deck of the alien ship, his face peaceful behind his helmet's clear visor. His final log entry, saved on his personal tablet, would later become one of the most quoted messages in the history of space exploration. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of a man who had found meaning in his final moments. "I came out here to mine asteroids and make enough money to pay for my brother's education. I'm dying having helped save someone who might prevent a war between worlds. I think that's a pretty good trade." Captain Williams read those words aloud to her crew as they prepared Jake's body for the journey home. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even the hardened engineers who had worked alongside Jake for months found themselves struggling with emotions they couldn't put into words. Cathara survived her injuries completely. the adapted biofilter working perfectly until she could receive proper medical treatment aboard the Star Runner. The first thing she did when she regained full consciousness was ask Dr. Peterson to tell her everything about the human who had saved her life, Jake Chen. She repeated slowly, practicing the pronunciation, "Tell me about his family, his dreams, his world. I must know who he was." Dr. Peterson spent hours sharing stories about Jake, how he always volunteered for the most dangerous mining assignments, how he sent most of his money home to support his brother's education, how he spent his free time studying alien cultures, because he believed different species could learn from each other. He wasn't a famous person, Dr. Peterson explained. He wasn't a diplomat or a scientist or a war hero. He was just a regular guy who fixed mining equipment and dreamed of making enough money to give his little brother a better life. Then he was the best kind of hero, Kethar replied. The kind who helps others without thinking of fame or reward. 3 months later, Kethar stood before the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Cooperative, speaking to representatives from dozens of different worlds. Her speech, translated into every known language in the galaxy, would be remembered as one of the most powerful moments in diplomatic history. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carrying across the vast assembly hall. I stand before you today because a human with dying breath chose to give life to an alien he had never met. Jake Chen knew nothing of my world, my people, or my mission. He knew only that I needed to breathe, and he had the power to make that possible. The assembly fell silent as Kethara continued. Some of you have argued that humans are too different from us, too unpredictable to trust with membership in our cooperative. I tell you now that this human, facing his own death, chose compassion over survival. If that is what humanity offers to the galaxy, then we would be fools to reject their friendship. The peace treaty between the Galactic Cooperative and humanity was signed 2 weeks later. Kethar insisted that Jake's name be included in the official documents, ensuring that his sacrifice would be remembered as long as the treaty existed. But Jake's impact reached far beyond politics and diplomacy. The Jake Chen Memorial Foundation was established jointly by Earth and the Cooperative, dedicated to developing better life support technology for all species. The Foundation's mission was simple. No one should ever again have to choose between their own life and another's because of incompatible technology. The Foundation's first major breakthrough came just 18 months after Jake's death. Scientists and engineers from multiple worlds worked together to create a universal biofilter that could adapt to any known respiratory system. The device was small, efficient, and most importantly, it could be shared between different species without risk. On Earth, Jake's brother Tom received the news of his brother's death through official channels, but the real story came in Jake's final message. Tom sat in his small apartment, reading his brother's words over and over again, tears streaming down his face. Your big brother is proud of you, the message ended. Take care of yourself, Tom. Become the doctor you've always wanted to be. Tom did exactly that. He completed his medical degree and specialized in xenobiology, the study of alien life forms. His first research project focused on respiratory systems across different species, building on the work that had made Jake's sacrifice possible. My brother gave his breath to save an alien life, Tom would tell his students years later. Now it's our job to make sure no one else ever has to make that choice. Tom's research led to revolutionary advances in cross-species medicine. He developed treatment protocols that could help any species, and his work saved thousands of lives. Across the galaxy, in interviews, he always credited his inspiration to his brother's final message and the example Jake had set. Kethar rose through the ranks of galactic diplomacy, eventually becoming the Cooperative's chief ambassador to the Terran Alliance. Every year on the anniversary of Jake's death, she would visit the memorial station that had been built from the wreckage of her original ship. The station orbited a small moon in the Kepler 440 system, serving as both a rest stop for travelers and a reminder of what one person's sacrifice could accomplish. Visitors from across the galaxy would come to pay their respects, leaving flowers, crystals, and other tokens of remembrance from their home worlds dot in the station's central chamber. A simple memorial displayed Jake's biofilter, preserved in a crystal case. The inscription below was written in every major language of the galaxy, in memory of Jake Chen, who chose to breathe life into others when his own breath grew short. But perhaps the most meaningful tribute was smaller and more personal. Every year, Tom would send a message to the memorial station, updating his brother on his progress and sharing news from Earth. Kethara would read these messages aloud during the annual remembrance ceremony, her voice carrying across the station's speakers. Dear Jake, Tom's latest message began. This year, we saved 43 lives using the universal biofilter technology inspired by your sacrifice. A Regelian child with lung damage, to human miners trapped in a collapsed tunnel, a Centaurian diplomat who suffered an allergic reaction to Earth's atmosphere. Each time someone uses this technology, they're breathing easier because of what you did. The message continued. I graduated top of my class last month. My thesis was on cross-species respiratory medicine, and I dedicated it to you. The professor said it was some of the best work she'd ever seen. I think you would have been proud. Kethara's voice grew softer as she read the final lines. I miss you every day, big brother. But I see you in every life we save, every bridge we build between different worlds, every moment when someone chooses compassion over fear. You were right. Helping others is what makes us human. Thank you for showing me how to live up to that. As the ceremony ended, visitors would often ask Kethara about Jake, wanting to know more about the human who had sacrificed everything for a stranger. She would tell them about his quiet determination, his love for his brother, his fascination with alien cultures, and most importantly, his belief that all intelligent life deserved respect and help. Jake Chen wasn't special because he was perfect, Kethara would explain. He was special because he was ordinary. He was a regular person who made an extraordinary choice when it mattered. That's the kind of hero the galaxy needs, not someone who seeks glory, but someone who simply chooses to do what's right. Years passed, and Jake's stories spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring countless others to acts of kindness and sacrifice. Children on dozens of worlds learned his name in school. Scientists named discoveries after him. Artists created works, celebrating his memory. But the greatest tribute to Jake Chen wasn't found in monuments or museums. It was found in the countless small acts of kindness that his story inspired. Aliens helping humans, humans helping aliens, and people of all species choosing compassion over fear. Jake's biofilter had been at 1% efficiency when he made his choice. But the impact of that choice continued to grow, proving that sometimes the most powerful legacies come not from grand gestures by famous people, but from ordinary individuals who choose to breathe life into others, even when their own breath grows short. In the vastness of space, where life is precious and breath is sacred, Jake Chen's name became synonymous with the simple truth that connects all intelligent beings. We are stronger when we help each other, and heroes are made not by seeking glory, but by choosing compassion when it costs us everything.